The rain fell in heavy sheets across downtown, turning the streets into rivers of gray water that rushed toward the drains. Lightning had stopped an hour ago, but the storm continued its assault on the city as if it had something to prove. Most people had taken shelter long ago. The sidewalks were empty except for those rushing from doorways to waiting cars, umbrellas useless against the sideways wind. But there was one small figure who had not moved. She stood on the corner across from the tallest building on the block, a tower of glass and steel that seemed to disappear into the dark clouds above. Her red cardigan was soaked through, clinging to her thin shoulders. Her braids hung heavy with water, dripping down her back. Her shoes, once white with pink flowers, were now brown with mud and completely waterlogged. In her small hands she held a piece of cardboard. The marker had started to run in the rain hours ago, but the words were still readable if you looked closely enough. "Please save our home." 7-year-old Amara Johnson had been standing there for 4 hours. Her teeth chattered. Her fingers had gone numb around the edges of the sign. Every few minutes, a violent shiver would run through her entire body, and she would have to plant her feet wider to keep from falling over. But she did not move. She did not leave. She did not give up. People had walked past her all afternoon. Some had glanced at her with confusion. Others had looked away quickly, pretending they had not seen a child alone in a storm. A security guard from the building had come out twice to tell her she could not stand there, but both times she had simply moved a few feet to the public sidewalk and continued her silent watch. She was waiting for one person. One man. The only person she believed could help. She had heard her mother crying 3 nights ago. Candace Johnson never cried, not even when things were hard, not even when the bills piled up or the donations ran low. But 3 nights ago, Amara had woken up to use the bathroom and found her mother sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere, tears streaming down her face. "We have 3 days," her mother had whispered into the phone. 3 days and then it's over. Everything we built. All those children. I don't know what to do." Amara had not understood all of it, but she understood enough. The community center where her mother worked every day, the place where Amara did her homework and played with her friends, the building that felt more like home than their tiny apartment, was going to close. Someone had bought it and they wanted everyone out. Her mother had said there was nothing anyone could do. She had said the man who bought it was too powerful, too rich, and did not care about the children who needed that space. But Amara had remembered something. 6 months ago, her teacher Miss Grace had shown the class a news story about a businessman who had paid for a whole school to be rebuilt after a fire. The children had written thank you cards, and Miss Grace had told them that some rich people used their money to help others. "His name is Jonathan Pierce," Miss Grace had said. "He believes that those who have much should give much." Amara had remembered that name. And when her mother's crying had finally stopped and the apartment had gone quiet, Amara had made a decision. She would find Jonathan Pierce. She would ask him for help. She would not give up until he listened. It had taken her 2 days to figure out where his office was. She had used the computer at the library, typing slowly with one finger, searching for his name. She had found a picture of the building and memorized the address. This morning she had told her mother she was going to her friend's house after school. Instead, she had walked 6 blocks in the wrong direction, gotten lost twice, asked a nice lady at a bus stop for help, and finally found herself standing in front of Pierce Industries at 2:47 in the afternoon. The rain had started at 3:15. Now it was after 7 o'clock and the sky was completely dark. The building's lights glowed warm and yellow through the rain, but out here on the sidewalk, Amara could barely feel her own feet anymore. A black car pulled up to the curb in front of the building's main entrance. It was long and shiny, the kind of car Amara had only seen in movies. A man in a suit got out of the driver's side and hurried around to open an umbrella, preparing to shield whoever sat in the back. Amara's heart began to pound. The back door opened and a tall man stepped out. He had dark hair going gray at the temples and wore a perfectly fitted navy suit. Even from across the street, Amara could see that his shoes probably cost more than her mother made in a month. It was him. She recognized his face from the pictures online. Jonathan Pierce. He paused under the umbrella, looking at his phone, saying something to his driver. In a moment he would walk into that building and disappear into an elevator, and Amara would have failed. Her mother would lose the center. The children would have nowhere to go. Amara did not think. She just moved. Her numb legs carried her off the curb and into the street. A car honked somewhere to her left, but she did not stop. She splashed through puddles that came up to her ankles. She clutched her ruined sign against her chest and ran toward the man who held her whole world in his hands without even knowing it. "Mr. Pierce," she called out, her voice cracking from the cold. "Mr. Pierce, please. Please, I need to talk to you. The driver stepped forward to block her, but Jonathan held up his hand. For a long moment, the billionaire just stared at the small, soaked, shivering child standing before him. Rain dripped from her braids onto her face, mixing with what might have been tears. Her cardigan had turned from red to a deep burgundy under the weight of the water. Her sign, barely readable now, said something about saving a home. Please, Amara whispered. Please, you're the only one who can help us. If this little girl standing alone in the rain, fighting for her family with nothing but hope and courage, does not touch your heart, then maybe nothing will. Would you have the strength to stand in the cold for hours, fighting for the people you love? Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and tell us in the comments. What would you do if you were in Amara's shoes? And what do you think Jonathan Pierce will do next? Jonathan Pierce had seen many things in his 38 years of life. He had built a company from nothing. He had negotiated deals worth billions. He had met presidents and kings and celebrities. He had learned to read people, to see through their masks and understand their true intentions. But he had never seen anything quite like this. How long have you been out here? He asked, his voice soft. Since after school, Amara said. Her voice shook, but her eyes never left his face. I had to find you. You're the only one who can save our community center. Jonathan felt something shift in his chest. He did not know this child. He did not know anything about any community center. But something about her determination, her courage, her refusal to give up even when she was clearly freezing and exhausted, made him pause. What's your name? He asked. Amara. Amara Johnson. My mama runs Sunshine Community Center on Miller Street. We help 40 kids every day. But someone bought our building and we have to leave in 3 days and my mama doesn't know what to do, and I saw on the news that you help people and I thought maybe. She trailed off, her lower lip trembling. Jonathan made a decision. Come inside, he said. We need to get you warm and dry and then you can tell me everything. He held out his hand. Amara looked at it for a moment. Then she reached out with her small, cold fingers and placed them in his palm. As they walked toward the building, Jonathan glanced down at the child beside him. Her sign was falling apart in her hands, but she had not let go of it. Even now, even though she was inside and safe, she held on to the words she had written. Please save our home. He did not know yet what he would do. He did not know if he could help. But as he felt the cold of her fingers against his warm palm, he knew one thing for certain. He was going to try. The lobby of Pierce Industries was all white marble and soft lighting. Security guards in crisp uniforms stood at attention near the doors, and a massive reception desk dominated the center of the space. Normally at this hour, the building would be quiet, most employees having gone home for the day. Tonight there was a commotion. Jonathan walked through the lobby with Amara's hand still in his, ignoring the surprised looks from the security staff. His driver followed behind, umbrella dripping onto the pristine floor. Get me blankets, Jonathan said to the woman at the reception desk. And something warm to drink. Hot chocolate if we have it. Yes, Mr. Pierce. Right away. He led Amara to a sitting area with plush leather couches. She was still shivering violently, her whole body trembling as it tried to warm itself. Jonathan shrugged off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It hung down past her knees, but she pulled it tight and gave him a small, grateful smile. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome. Now we're going to get you warmed up and then I want you to tell me everything. From the beginning. Can you do that? Amara nodded. Within minutes, a security guard appeared with a stack of soft blankets and a steaming cup of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. Amara wrapped herself in the blankets and held the cup with both hands, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. Color slowly began to return to her cheeks. Jonathan sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. All right, Amara. Tell me about your community center. And so she did. Amara told him about Sunshine Community Center, the old brick building on Miller Street that her mother had turned into a home for the neighborhood's children. She told him about the after-school program where kids did their homework and got help from volunteer tutors. She told him about the hot meals that Miss Beverly cooked every day, the only real food some children got. She told him about the summer camp and the holiday parties and the reading corner where her mother sat with the little ones every afternoon. Mama started it 5 years ago, Amara said. After my daddy died. She said she needed something to do, something that would help her feel better. So she used all the money we had and she rented that building and she made it into a place where kids could be safe. Jonathan listened without interrupting. We have 40 kids who come every day. Some of them don't have anywhere else to go after school because their parents work late. Some of them live in apartments with too many people and need a quiet place to do homework. Some of them just need someone to care about them. She took a sip of her hot chocolate. But last month, Mr. Franklin sold the building. He didn't tell Mama first. He just sold it to some company that wants to tear it down and build condos. And now we have to leave by Friday or they'll call the police. Friday, Jonathan repeated. That's 3 days from now. 2.5, Amara corrected. It's Wednesday night. Jonathan sat back and ran a hand through his hair. He had heard stories like this before. Neighborhoods being pushed out by developers. Community spaces being destroyed to make room for expensive apartments that none of the current residents could afford. It was happening all over the city. Does your mother know you're here? He asked. Amara's eyes dropped to her hot chocolate. No. I told her I was at my friend Destiny's house. Amara. I know it was wrong to lie. But she would have said no. She would have told me that rich people don't care about people like us, that nobody was going to help, that we just have to accept what happens. But I couldn't accept it, Mr. Pierce. Those kids need us. And I saw on the news what you did for that school that burned down, and I thought, maybe you would help us too. Jonathan stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the rain continued to fall, streaming down the glass in silver ribbons. The city lights blurred and swam through the water. He thought about his own childhood. Growing up in a house that was too big and too empty. Parents who were never home. Money everywhere but no warmth, no connection, no community. He had spent his adult life building a fortune, but lately he had begun to wonder what it was all for. He turned back to face Amara. I want to see it, he said. This community center of yours. Can you take me there tonight? Amara's face lit up with hope. Really? You'll come? I'm not promising anything yet. But I want to see what we're talking about before I make any decisions. Is your mother still there? She's always there. She stays late every night making sure everything is ready for the next day. Jonathan nodded and pulled out his phone. I'm going to have my driver take us there. But first we need to call your mother and let her know you're safe. She must be worried. He watched Amara's expression shift from hope to fear. She's going to be so mad at me. Probably, Jonathan agreed. But she deserves to know you're okay. And I have a feeling that once she sees why you did what you did, she'll understand. He handed Amara his phone. Her hands shook slightly as she dialed her mother's number. The drive to Miller Street took 20 minutes through the rain-slicked streets. Amara sat in the back of the car wrapped in blankets, watching the neighborhoods change outside the window. The gleaming downtown towers gave way to smaller buildings, brick apartments, corner stores with bars on the windows. Jonathan watched too. He had driven through areas like this before, but always on his way somewhere else. He had never stopped. Never looked closely at the people who lived here, the businesses they ran, the communities they built. The car pulled up in front of a 2-story brick building with a hand-painted sign above the door. Sunshine Community Center. Yellow light spilled from the windows onto the wet sidewalk. Even through the rain, Jonathan could hear the sound of children's voices and laughter. He got out of the car and helped Amara out after him. The front door flew open and a woman came running out into the rain. She was beautiful, Jonathan noticed immediately, with warm brown skin and natural curly hair pulled back from her face. She wore a bright blue sweater over jeans, and her eyes were red from crying. Amara, she cried, falling to her knees and pulling her daughter into her arms. Baby, I was so scared. I didn't know where you were. I called everyone, I was about to call the police. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. But I had to help. I had to try. Candace Johnson looked up from her daughter and seemed to notice Jonathan for the first time. Her expression shifted from relief to confusion to something like suspicion. Who are you? She asked, rising to her feet but keeping one arm around Amara. My name is Jonathan Pierce. Your daughter found me downtown and asked for my help. Candace's eyes widened. You're the one from the news. The billionaire. I'd rather just be called Jonathan if that's all right. He glanced at the building behind her. Amara told me about your center. She told me what's happening. Would you be willing to show me around? For a long moment, Candace just stared at him. Jonathan could see the wheels turning in her head, the questions she wanted to ask, the doubts she was fighting. Then she looked down at her daughter, soaked and shivering but absolutely determined, and something in her expression softened. Come inside, she said. Let me show you what we've built. The inside of Sunshine Community Center was nothing like Jonathan had expected. He had imagined something run-down, barely functional, held together with duct tape and hope. What he found instead was a space filled with warmth and life. Yes, the furniture was mismatched and the paint was peeling in places. But the walls were covered with children's artwork. Bookshelves overflowed with colorful books. A bulletin board near the entrance displayed photos of smiling faces, report cards with good grades, notes of thanks from parents. The main room held about 20 children ranging from toddlers to teenagers. Some were doing homework at long tables while volunteers helped them. Others were playing games in the corner. A group of older kids was practicing a dance routine near the stage at the back of the room. An elderly woman with silver hair and a floral dress came over to greet them. "There she is," she said, pulling Amara into a hug. "Child, you gave us a fright. Don't you ever do that again." "I won't, Miss Beverly. I promise." Beverly looked up at Jonathan with sharp, assessing eyes. "So you're the one she went to find. Well, take a good look around, Mr. Moneybags. This is what real wealth looks like." "Beverly," Candace said quietly. But Jonathan just smiled. "She's right. I've never owned anything worth as much as this." He spent the next hour walking through the center. He watched a young Korean-American woman named Grace help a struggling reader sound out words. He saw a Hispanic man named Miguel pick up his twin boys and thank Candace for giving them a safe place to go after school. He observed teenagers tutoring younger children, grandmothers sharing recipes in the kitchen, parents lingering to chat even after they came to pick up their kids. This was not just a building. This was a community. A family that was not bound by blood but by choice, by love, by the decision to show up for each other every single day. When he finally returned to where Candace was standing near the entrance, his decision was made. "I want to help," he said. Candace's eyes searched his face. Why? It was a fair question. He was a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. He had no connection to this neighborhood, no reason to care about its problems. "Because your daughter stood in the rain for 4 hours waiting for me," Jonathan said. "Because she believed that asking for help was worth the cold and the fear and the uncertainty. Because if a 7-year-old girl has that much courage, the least I can do is match it." He paused. "And because I've spent my whole life building things that don't matter. Companies. Portfolios. Wealth. But I've never built anything like this. I've never been part of anything that actually helps people. I want to change that. If you'll let me." Candace was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay, Mr. Pierce. Let's talk." They sat in Candace's small office at the back of the building, a cramped space with papers stacked on every surface and a desk that had seen better days. Amara had finally fallen asleep on a small couch in the corner, wrapped in a blanket that Miss Beverly had brought, exhausted from her ordeal. Jonathan looked at the papers spread before him. Eviction notices. Legal documents. Letters from the development company demanding they vacate by Friday. "How much did they pay for the building?" he asked. Candace sighed. $800,000. Mr. Franklin owned it for 30 years, but his health is failing and he needed the money. I can't blame him. I just wish he had given us more warning." "And the development company? Who are they?" "Bright Future Properties. They've been buying up buildings all over this neighborhood. They're going to tear down everything and build luxury condos. No one who lives here now will be able to afford them." Jonathan pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to his assistant Rachel. He needed information on Bright Future Properties immediately. "What if I bought the building from them?" he asked. Candace stared at him. "What?" "If I offered them more than they paid, they might be willing to sell. Developers like that are usually more interested in profit than in any specific property. If the money is right, they'll move on to something else. But that would cost." "Let me worry about the cost. Would you be willing to accept that help?" Candace was quiet for a long moment. Jonathan could see her struggling with the offer. Pride, he understood. The desire to do things on her own, to not owe anyone anything. He had felt the same way most of his life. But then she looked at her sleeping daughter. At the child who had stood in the rain for hours, who had believed that help was possible when no one else did. "Yes," Candace said softly. "If you can save this place, I'll accept your help." "With gratitude." Jonathan nodded. "Then let me make some calls." The next morning, Jonathan was at Bright Future Properties before they even opened their doors. He had spent the night researching, planning, and preparing. By the time the company's representatives arrived, he had already made them an offer they could not refuse. $2 million for a building they had paid $800,000 for less than a month ago. The deal closed by noon. When Jonathan arrived at Sunshine Community Center that afternoon, he found Candace sitting on the front steps with her head in her hands. Several parents had gathered nearby, speaking in worried tones. The children were unusually quiet inside. "It's over," she said as he approached. "We just got the final notice. Friday is our last day." Jonathan sat down beside her and handed her a document. Candace looked at it with confusion. "What is this?" The deed to this building. It's yours. Or rather, it belongs to the Sunshine Community Center Foundation, which I established this morning with you as the director. Candace's hands were shaking as she read the document. Her eyes moved over the words again and again, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. You bought it, she whispered. You actually bought it. I told you I wanted to help. I meant it. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to thank you. I don't know how to. You don't have to thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep helping these kids. That's all I ask. One of the parents had come closer to see what was happening. When Candace showed her the deed, the woman let out a cry of joy that brought everyone running. Within minutes, the news had spread through the entire building. Children were cheering. Adults were hugging each other and crying. Miss Beverly had started singing an old hymn, and soon everyone was joining in. Jonathan stood back and watched it all unfold. He had closed bigger deals than this. He had made more money in a single morning than he had spent on this building. But he had never felt anything like this before. This feeling of having done something that actually mattered. Amara appeared at his side, looking up at him with wide, shining eyes. You did it, she said. You saved our home. We did it, Jonathan corrected. None of this would have happened if you hadn't been brave enough to ask for help. She threw her arms around his waist and hugged him tight. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Jonathan Pierce felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Over the next few days, Jonathan found himself returning to the center again and again. He told himself it was to make sure everything was in order, to handle the paperwork, to meet with lawyers about the foundation. But if he was being honest, he just wanted to be there. He helped Miguel's twin boys with their math homework. He read stories to the younger children. He had long conversations with Miss Beverly about the history of the neighborhood, learning things that no amount of money could buy. And he spent time with Candace. She was remarkable, he realized. Strong and gentle at the same time. Fierce in her protection of the children but soft in the way she comforted them when they were scared or hurt. She worked harder than anyone he had ever met, arriving before dawn and staying past midnight, never complaining, never asking for anything for herself. She was also beautiful. He noticed that more with each passing day. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. The warmth in her voice when she spoke to the children. The way she moved through the center like it was an extension of herself. Miss Beverly noticed him noticing. You've got that look, she said one afternoon, cornering him in the kitchen while he was helping wash dishes. What look? The look that says you're falling for someone you barely know. She handed him another plate to dry. Candace has been through a lot. She lost her husband 3 years ago. Cancer. Took him fast. She put everything she had into this place because it was the only thing that kept her going. Jonathan dried the plate carefully. I'm not here to cause any trouble. I know you're not. I've been watching you. You're a good man, Jonathan Pierce. Better than you probably think you are. She patted his arm. Just be patient with her. She's got walls up. But if you're the right person, she'll let them down eventually. That night, as Jonathan drove home to his empty penthouse apartment, he thought about Beverly's words. He thought about walls and patience and being the right person. He thought about how a 7-year-old girl standing in the rain had somehow changed everything. 2 weeks after Jonathan bought the building, he arrived at the center with a team of architects and contractors. What's all this? Candace asked, watching the parade of professionals spread out through the space. I've been looking at the building's condition, Jonathan said. The roof needs replacing. The wiring is outdated and potentially dangerous. The plumbing is held together by hope and prayer. If we're going to keep this place running, we need to make some serious upgrades. Candace's expression was guarded. That sounds expensive. It will be. But it's necessary. He pulled out a folder of plans. I'd like to propose a full renovation. New electrical, new plumbing, a proper HVAC system so the kids aren't freezing in winter. We can expand the kitchen, add more bathrooms, maybe even build a proper playground in the back lot. She looked at the plans, then looked at him. Jonathan, you've already done so much. I can't keep accepting. Yes, you can, he said firmly but gently. Candace, let me be clear about something. I'm not doing this because I expect anything in return. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, and because I have the resources to do it. Please don't let pride get in the way of helping these kids. Are you the kind of person who would let pride stand between children and a better future? Or would you accept help when it's offered with a good heart? Before we continue, hit subscribe and leave a comment telling us, should Candace accept Jonathan's offer, and what do you think will happen between them? Candace was silent for a long moment. Then she looked around at the building she had poured 5 years of her life into. The peeling paint. The flickering lights. The bathroom that only worked half the time. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I accept." With gratitude. The renovation began the following Monday. Jonathan had arranged for a temporary space in a nearby church basement so the programs could continue while the work was being done. The transition was chaotic but filled with laughter, the children treating it like an adventure. Meanwhile, the old building was transformed. Workers arrived at dawn every day, their trucks filling the small parking lot. Miguel had asked if he could help, and Jonathan had immediately hired him as lead contractor, impressed by his knowledge and work ethic. Soon, other parents from the community were joining in, some as paid workers, others as volunteers. Jonathan was there every day too. He traded his expensive suits for jeans and work boots. He learned how to use a paintbrush, how to carry drywall, how to follow instructions from people who knew far more than he did about building things with their hands. His muscles ached at the end of each day in ways he had never experienced before. He loved every minute of it. "You're different out here," Grace said one afternoon, watching him help install new windows. "Then you are in the news, I mean. On TV you always look so serious." "I am serious," Jonathan said with a slight smile. "Just about different things now." As the weeks passed, the building was transformed. Fresh blue paint covered the walls. New floors replaced the worn linoleum. The kitchen expanded to twice its original size, with proper commercial equipment and enough space for Miss Beverly to teach cooking classes. A modern playground took shape in the back lot, with swings and slides and climbing structures in bright colors. And through it all, Jonathan and Candace worked side by side. He learned that she woke up at 5 every morning to prepare for the day. He learned that her favorite color was green, like the sweater she wore most often. He learned that she sang quietly to herself when she thought no one was listening, old gospel songs that her grandmother had taught her. She learned that he had grown up lonely despite his family's wealth. She learned that he had started his first company at 22 with nothing but determination and a refusal to fail. She learned that beneath the polished exterior of the billionaire was a man who had never quite figured out where he belonged. "Why didn't you ever get married?" she asked one evening. They were sitting on paint cans in the empty building, eating sandwiches from the deli down the street, the last ones there after everyone else had gone home. Jonathan considered the question. "I never found someone who wanted me for the right reasons. Most people see the money first. The real me. I'm not sure many people have ever bothered to look." "I see you," Candace said quietly. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, something unspoken but powerful. Then Amara came running in with a drawing she had made of the new playground, and the moment passed. But something had shifted. They both felt it. Miss Beverly, watching from the doorway, just smiled. 6 weeks into the renovation, disaster struck. The contractors had opened up one of the walls to run new electrical wiring when they discovered something that made everyone's heart sink: termite damage. Extensive termite damage. The wooden beams that supported the building's structure had been slowly eaten away over decades, hidden behind the plaster. "How bad is it?" Jonathan asked, looking at the exposed wall with growing concern. Miguel shook his head. "Bad. Real bad. The building is not safe, Mr. Pierce. We need to stop all work until we get a structural engineer in here." The engineer arrived the next day. After a thorough inspection, he delivered news that felt like a punch to the gut. "I'm sorry," he said, spreading his report across the table in the temporary church space. "The damage is too extensive. Repairing it would cost more than the building is worth, and even then I couldn't guarantee it would be safe. My recommendation is to demolish and rebuild." Candace sank into a chair, her face ashen. "Demolish? But that building has been here for 100 years. It's part of the neighborhood." Jonathan looked at the report, then looked at Candace. He saw the devastation in her eyes, the way this news had hit her like a physical blow. "What would it cost to rebuild?" he asked the engineer. "From scratch? With the kind of specifications you'd want for a community center?" The engineer did some quick calculations. $3 million minimum. Probably closer to 4 with all the features you've been talking about. It was a massive sum. Even for Jonathan, it was significant. But when he looked at Candace, when he thought about Amara standing in the rain, when he remembered the feeling of being part of something that actually mattered, the number seemed almost irrelevant. "Do it," he said. Candace's head snapped up. "Jonathan, no. That's too much. I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to do this." He moved to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "Candace, listen to me. That building is just bricks and wood. What matters is what happens inside it. The children. The programs. The community you've built. None of that has to disappear just because we're putting it in a new home. But the cost. is mine to worry about, not yours. He squeezed her hands gently. Please, let me do this. For the children. For the neighborhood. For Amara. He paused. For you. Tears were streaming down Candace's face. She tried to speak but could not find the words. Miss Beverly stepped forward and put a hand on her shoulder. Child, sometimes the best thing you can do is accept a blessing when it's offered. This man wants to help. Let him. Finally, Candace nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you so much. He smiled, feeling something warm spread through his chest. We're going to build something amazing, he promised. Just wait and see. The next month was a whirlwind of activity. While the old building was carefully demolished, preserving what could be saved for use in the new structure, Jonathan worked with architects to design something better than anyone had imagined. The new Sunshine Community Center would be 3 times the size of the original. It would have multiple classrooms, a computer lab, a full gymnasium, and a commercial kitchen. There would be offices for social workers and a small health clinic. The playground would be expanded, and a rooftop garden would provide fresh vegetables for the meal programs. Meanwhile, the community rallied together. Jonathan's company offered its headquarters community room as a temporary location for the children's programs. Grace coordinated the move with her usual efficiency, making sure that not a single day of programming was lost. Parents volunteered extra hours to help with transportation, and local businesses donated supplies and food. Terrence Brown, a lawyer from the neighborhood who had grown up attending programs at the original center, offered his services pro bono to handle all the legal work for the new foundation. Rachel, Jonathan's assistant, found herself spending more and more time at the temporary location, charmed by the children and impressed by Candace's leadership. Through all the chaos, Jonathan and Candace grew closer. They worked late together most nights, planning and problem-solving. They discovered they had similar senses of humor, both of them prone to terrible jokes that made the other groan. They learned each other's rhythms, the way Candace needed coffee before she could function in the morning, the way Jonathan paced when he was thinking through a difficult problem. Amara had begun to call him Mr. Jonathan instead of Mr. Pierce. She showed him her school projects and asked for his opinion on her drawings. She told him about her friends, her teachers, her dreams of becoming a doctor when she grew up. Jonathan had never spent much time around children before. He was surprised by how much he enjoyed it. How much he looked forward to seeing Amara's smile. How much her happiness had begun to matter to him. One evening, as they were closing up the temporary space, Amara asked him a question that stopped him in his tracks. Mr. Jonathan, do you love my mama? He looked at the little girl with her earnest eyes and her bright red hair bow. I care about her very much, he said carefully. Amara nodded as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. Good, she said. Because she smiles more when you're around. She hasn't smiled like that since my daddy died. Then she skipped off to get her backpack, leaving Jonathan standing alone with a heart that suddenly felt too full for his chest. Construction on the new building progressed faster than anyone expected. The foundation was laid within weeks, and the frame went up shortly after. Every day Jonathan watched the structure grow taller, stronger, more real. But it was not the building that occupied most of his thoughts. It was Candace. She had begun to open up to him in ways that made his heart ache with tenderness and hope. Late one night, after everyone else had gone home, she told him about her husband. His name was Marcus, she said softly. They were sitting on a bench near the construction site, watching the moon rise over the skeleton of the new building. We met in college. He was studying to be a teacher and I was getting my degree in social work. We got married right after graduation. Jonathan listened in silence. He was the kindest man I ever knew. He used to say that the measure of a person wasn't what they had but what they gave. When Amara was born he was so happy. He used to dance around the apartment with her in his arms, singing silly songs. Her voice wavered. The cancer came fast. 6 months from diagnosis too. She could not finish the sentence. After he died, I didn't know how to keep living. Everything felt pointless. But then I looked at Amara and I knew I had to be strong for her. And I thought about what Marcus always said about giving. So I took everything we had and I started the center. She turned to look at Jonathan. I've been so focused on building something for others that I forgot how to accept anything for myself. You've shown me that it's okay to need help. That accepting kindness doesn't make you weak. Jonathan reached over and took her hand. She did not pull away. I spent my whole life thinking that being successful meant not needing anyone, he said. Building walls, staying independent, never letting anyone get close enough to hurt me. But that's not living. That's just surviving. What changed? She asked. A little girl stood in the rain and reminded me that courage means asking for help when you need it. And her mother showed me what it looks like to build something with love instead of just money. They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, hands intertwined, watching the stars. As the weeks passed, Jonathan became a fixture in Amara's life. He helped her with homework assignments. He attended her school play, sitting in the front row with Candace and clapping louder than anyone. He taught her chess and she taught him how to make friendship bracelets. She had insisted on making him one in blue and green, and he wore it every day under his sleeve, even to board meetings. Miss Beverly watched all of this with satisfaction. "That man is falling in love with both of you," she told Candace one afternoon. "And if you ask me, it's about time." Candace blushed. "Beverly. Don't you Beverly me. You're falling too. I can see it in your face every time he walks in the door. And there's nothing wrong with that. Marcus would want you to be happy." It was the mention of Marcus that made Candace's eyes fill with tears. "I know," she whispered. "I know he would. It feels strange. Moving on." "It's not moving on," Beverly said gently. "It's moving forward. There's a difference. You'll always love Marcus. But your heart is big enough to love again." That night, Candace lay awake thinking about what Beverly had said. She thought about Jonathan's kindness, his patience, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. She thought about how Amara's face lit up when he walked in the door. She thought about whether she was ready to open her heart again. And somewhere deep inside she felt the answer begin to form. Jonathan made his move a few days later. The new building was almost complete, the exterior finished and the interior work in its final stages. They were planning a grand opening for the following month, and excitement was building throughout the community. He found Candace in what would become her new office, standing at the window looking out at the playground being installed below. "I want to show you something," he said. She turned with a smile. "More surprises? Jonathan, you've done so much already. This is different. This is about the future." He spread blueprints across her desk. As she looked at them, her eyes grew wider. "This isn't just a community center," she said slowly. "This is a whole campus. It's what I want to build next," Jonathan explained. "A full community hub. Free after-school programs in the center, but also job training facilities next door. A health clinic with real doctors and nurses. A food bank that operates year-round. Office space for social services so people don't have to travel across the city for help." He took her hand. "You've shown me what's possible when you put community first. I want to scale that up. I want to turn this neighborhood into a model that other neighborhoods can follow. And I want you to lead it." Candace was speechless. "I've already established a foundation with enough funding to operate for 20 years, Jonathan continued. "Terrence is handling the legal structure. Rachel has agreed to serve as executive director of operations. But the vision, the heart, the leadership, that has to be you, Candace. No one else could do this the way you can." She looked at the blueprints, then at him. "You really believe I can do this?" "I believe you can do anything," he said simply. "I've watched you. You have a gift for making people feel seen, feel valued, feel like they matter. That's not something you can learn. You either have it or you don't. And you have it." Candace felt tears welling up again. Happy tears this time. Overwhelmed tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do it. Say you'll let me help you build something that will change lives for generations." She nodded, unable to speak. "And one more thing," Jonathan said, his voice softer now. "I know this isn't the most romantic setting. I know we're standing in the middle of a construction zone surrounded by blueprints and dust. But I've been wanting to ask you something for weeks, and I can't wait any longer." Candace's breath caught. "Would you have dinner with me? A real dinner. Just the two of us. Like a proper date." She laughed, a sound of pure joy that filled the empty room. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I would love that." Jonathan smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. "Friday night. I'll pick you up at 7. Their first date was everything Candace had not realized she was missing. Jonathan took her to a quiet restaurant on the waterfront, a place with soft lighting and live piano music and a view of the city skyline reflecting off the water. She wore a deep green dress that Miss Beverly had helped her pick out, and when Jonathan saw her, he forgot how to breathe for a moment. "You look beautiful," he said. Candace felt herself blush. "You don't look so bad yourself." They talked for hours. Not about the center or the foundation or the construction. Just about themselves. Their dreams, their fears, their favorite memories. Jonathan told her about the first company he built and how he almost lost everything before it succeeded. Candace told him about the day Amara was born and how Marcus had cried harder than she did. At the end of the night, standing outside her apartment building, Jonathan took her hands. "I've been thinking about what I want my life to look like," he said. "For a long time I didn't have an answer. But now I do." Candace waited, heart pounding. "I want to wake up every morning and do work that matters. I want to be surrounded by people I care about. I want to build things that will outlast me." He paused. "And I want to do it with you. I'm falling in love with you, Candace. I think I have been since the first night I walked into your center and saw what you've created." She reached up and touched his face. "I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted. "And it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because the last time I loved someone this much, I lost him. And I don't know if I could survive that again." Jonathan pulled her close. "I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that I'll be there for you. Through everything. For as long as you'll let me." She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's see where this goes." The grand opening was scheduled for the first Saturday of October. As the date approached, excitement built throughout the neighborhood. The new Sunshine Community Center had become a symbol of hope, a proof that good things were possible when people came together. Jonathan threw himself into the final preparations. He wanted everything to be perfect. Not for his own sake, but for Candace, for Amara, for the community that had welcomed him as one of their own. The building was finally complete. It was beautiful, all clean lines and bright colors, welcoming and warm. The gymnasium floor gleamed. The computer lab hummed with new equipment. The kitchen smelled like fresh paint and possibility. On the day before the opening, Jonathan gathered everyone in the main hall. "I have some announcements," he said, looking around at the faces that had become so familiar to him over the past months. "First, I want to thank everyone who made this possible. Miguel and his crew who worked countless hours to build this place. Grace who kept our programs running through every transition. Beverly who kept us all fed and sane. Terrence who handled more paperwork than any human should have to face. Rachel who somehow managed to keep track of everything." He paused, emotion welling up. "And Candace, who showed me what community really means." She smiled at him from across the room, her eyes shining. "Tomorrow we open these doors. But we're not just opening a building. We're opening a new chapter for this entire neighborhood. And I have a few more surprises to share." He unveiled the plans he had been working on in secret. A scholarship fund for every child in the center's programs, to help pay for college. A job placement program partnering with businesses across the city, guaranteed interviews for any parent who completed the training courses. A healthcare partnership with the city's best hospital, providing free preventive care and treatment for center families. The room erupted in cheers and tears and hugs. Jonathan found himself surrounded by people thanking him, shaking his hand, patting his back. But his eyes kept finding Candace across the room. She was crying openly, overwhelmed by what he had done. When he finally made his way to her side, she threw her arms around him. "How?" she asked. "How did you do all this without me knowing?" "I had help," he admitted. "Beverly is a very good secret keeper." Candace laughed through her tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "I have an idea," he said, a hint of nervousness creeping into his voice. "But it's going to have to wait until tomorrow." She looked at him curiously, but he just smiled and kissed her forehead. "Tomorrow?" he repeated. "Everything will make sense tomorrow." The morning of the grand opening dawned bright and clear. Candace woke early, too excited to sleep. She dressed in her favorite blue dress and helped Amara into a beautiful red outfit that Beverly had sewn for the occasion. They arrived at the center before anyone else, walking through the empty halls one last time before they filled with people. "Mama," Amara said, looking around with wonder, "is this really ours?" "It's ours," Candace confirmed. "For always." By 10 o'clock the crowd had gathered. Hundreds of people filled the main hall and spilled out onto the new playground. There were families who had been part of the center for years and neighbors who were just learning about it. Local politicians stood next to construction workers. Children ran around the adults playing tag, too excited to stand still. Jonathan appeared at Candace's side, looking handsome in a navy suit. "Ready?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "Ready." Together, they stepped up to the small stage that had been set up near the entrance. "Thank you all for being here today," Candace began, her voice amplified by the microphone. 6 months ago this center almost ceased to exist. We had 3 days to vacate a building that had been our home for 5 years. I was ready to give up. She looked at Amara standing in the front row with Beverly. But my daughter refused to let that happen. She believed that if you ask for help with courage and hope, help will come. And she was right. She turned to Jonathan. This man walked into our lives when we needed him most. He saved our building, and when that building proved to be beyond saving, he built us a new one. Better than anything we could have imagined. He has given this community hope for the future. She handed him the microphone. I don't deserve nearly as much credit as Candace is giving me, Jonathan said. All I did was write some checks. The real work, the real magic, has always been Candace and the incredible people she's gathered around her. He cleared his throat. But I didn't come here today just to cut a ribbon and make a speech. I came here because I have something important to ask. A murmur ran through the crowd. Jonathan turned to face Candace directly. 6 months ago, a little girl stood in the rain and changed my life. She led me to a community center, a remarkable woman, and a purpose I never knew I was searching for. I came here thinking I would help you. Instead, you helped me find myself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Candace's hand flew to her mouth. Candace Johnson, I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your dedication to everyone around you. I love how you light up when you talk about the children. I love how you make me feel like I'm finally home. He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple and elegant, with a green stone surrounded by small diamonds. Will you marry me? The crowd held its breath. Candace looked at the ring, then at Jonathan, then at Amara, who was bouncing up and down with excitement. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, absolutely yes. Jonathan slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. The crowd erupted in cheers. Children threw confetti that someone had brought for the ribbon cutting. Beverly was crying into her handkerchief. Miguel was slapping Jonathan on the back. Rachel was taking pictures. And in the middle of it all, Amara squeezed between them and hugged them both. I knew it, she said triumphantly. I knew you were going to be my new daddy. Jonathan knelt down to look her in the eye. If you'll have me, he said, I would be honored. Amara threw her arms around his neck. I'll have you, she said. The rest of the grand opening passed in a blur of joy and celebration. Jonathan and Candace cut the ribbon together, their hands joined on the oversized scissors. Children rushed inside to explore every corner of their new home. Parents wandered through the job training facilities with hope in their eyes. Doctors from the partner hospital gave tours of the clinic space. But the biggest surprise was still to come. As the afternoon wound down and families began to gather for the closing ceremony, Jonathan stepped back onto the stage. Before we finish today, I have a few more announcements, he said. Candace looked at him with curiosity. She thought she knew all the surprises, but his expression told her otherwise. First, I'm pleased to announce that starting next month, every child enrolled in Sunshine Community Center programs will receive a full scholarship to the college or trade school of their choice when they graduate high school. This fund has been established permanently and will continue for generations. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Second, every parent who completes our job training programs will be guaranteed an interview with one of our partner companies. We now have 47 businesses on board, offering positions in everything from healthcare to technology to skilled trades. More gasps. A few people started crying. Third, our healthcare partnership has expanded. Beginning in January, any family connected to Sunshine Community Center will have access to free preventive care, including annual checkups, dental care, and vision services. The crowd was overwhelmed. Jonathan could see people hugging each other, wiping tears, shaking their heads in disbelief. But he was not finished. Finally, I have some personal news to share. He reached out his hand and Candace joined him on stage. Many of you witnessed my proposal earlier today. I'm happy to say that Candace has agreed to become my wife. Cheers erupted again. But there's something else. With Candace's blessing, I have already begun the legal process of adopting Amara as my daughter. Candace turned to him in shock. Jonathan. I spoke with Terrence last week, he explained, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted it to be part of today, part of this new beginning. I want us to be a family in every way that matters. Amara came running up the steps and Jonathan lifted her into his arms. Is it true? She asked. You're going to be my real daddy? If you want me to be, he said. She threw her arms around his neck. I want you to be. More than anything. The three of them stood together on the stage, surrounded by their community, the setting sun casting golden light through the new building's windows. It was a moment none of them would ever forget. Beverly stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Well, she said into the microphone, I think there's only one thing left to say. She turned to face the crowd. Welcome to Sunshine Community Center. A place built by love. For love. And with love. The applause was deafening. 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning, the Sunshine Community Center hosted its most special event yet. White chairs filled the gymnasium, decorated with ribbons in blue and green. Fresh flowers adorned every surface. Soft music played as guests found their seats. Children from the center served as ushers, taking their responsibilities very seriously in their best clothes. At the front of the room, under an arch of white roses, Jonathan Pierce stood waiting. He had never been so nervous in his life. Board meetings with billions of dollars on the line had not made his palms sweat like this. Negotiations with the most powerful people in the world had not made his heart race like this. But when the doors opened and he saw Candace walking toward him, all the nervousness melted away. She was breathtaking. Her dress was simple but elegant, a soft ivory that complemented her beautiful brown skin. Her natural curls were adorned with small white flowers. She carried a bouquet of green and blue blooms, and her smile was brighter than anything Jonathan had ever seen. Beside her, Amara walked proudly in her role as flower girl, scattering petals from a basket and grinning ear to ear in her beautiful red dress. Beverly stood at the front, ordained for the occasion, her floral dress replaced by elegant robes. "We are gathered here today," she began, her voice strong and warm, "to celebrate a love that began with an act of courage. A little girl stood in the rain and asked a stranger for help. And that stranger became something much more." Jonathan took Candace's hands as she reached the front. Their eyes locked and the rest of the world seemed to fade away. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows and as they spoke them, there was not a dry eye in the room. "Candace," Jonathan said, "you taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the lives you touch. You showed me what it means to be part of a community. You gave me a family when I thought I would always be alone. I promise to love you, support you, and stand beside you for the rest of my life." "Jonathan," Candace replied, "you came into our lives when we needed you most and showed us that kindness still exists in this world. You saw the best in me when I had forgotten it was there. You love my daughter as your own, and you've given her a father she deserves. I promise to love you, trust you, and build our future together, one day at a time." Beverly smiled and turned to Amara. "And do you, Amara, accept Jonathan as your father to love and respect from this day forward?" Amara nodded vigorously. "I do. I really, really do." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Then by the power vested in me," Beverly concluded, "I am honored to pronounce you husband and wife, and officially a family. You may kiss your bride." Jonathan pulled Candace into his arms and kissed her softly as cheers filled the room. Amara squeezed between them for a family hug, and cameras flashed from every direction. The reception was held in the main hall of the community center, transformed for the occasion into a winter wonderland of white and silver decorations. Food covered long tables, prepared by Miss Beverly and her team of volunteer cooks. A DJ played music that got everyone from the smallest children to the oldest grandparents onto the dance floor. Jonathan danced with Candace to their first song as husband and wife, holding her close and wondering how he had gotten so lucky. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just how different my life was a year ago. I had everything and nothing at the same time. Now I have everything that actually matters." She kissed him softly. "We're just getting started," she said. Later, he danced with Amara, lifting her onto his feet so she could reach him, making her giggle as they spun around the floor. "Thank you," he whispered to her. "For what?" "For standing in the rain. For not giving up. For changing my life." Amara looked up at him with the same determined expression she had worn on that rainy night months ago. "I knew you would help us," she said simply. "I just knew." As the evening wound down and guests began to say their goodbyes, Jonathan found himself standing at the window of the community center, looking out at the neighborhood that had become his home. So much had changed. The old building was gone, replaced by something better. The programs had expanded, serving not just 40 children but over 200. Parents were finding jobs through the training programs. Families were getting the healthcare they needed. Lives were being transformed one day at a time. And he had a family of his own. Candace came to stand beside him, Amara already half asleep in her arms. "What are you looking at?" she asked. "The future," he said. "Our future." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "It looks pretty good from here." He put his arm around both of them and held them close. A week later, the center was bustling with activity as usual. Children ran through the halls, eager to participate in after-school programs. Parents chatted in the lobby, exchanging tips about the job training courses. Miss Beverly presided over the kitchen, teaching a group of teenagers how to make her famous cornbread. In her new office, Candace reviewed plans for the spring expansion. Jonathan had kept his promise, moving his foundation headquarters to the neighborhood. Rachel worked down the hall, coordinating operations. Terrence was on call whenever legal questions arose. Grace had been promoted to Director of Educational Programs, overseeing a staff of 12 teachers and tutors. Ann Miguel, now the foundation's head of facilities and construction, was already planning the next building. Jonathan appeared in the doorway. "Ready for lunch?" Candace smiled. "Just let me save this." They walked out together, hand in hand, passing through the halls where their story had begun. Near the entrance, they found Amara sitting with a group of children on the floor. She was telling them a story and they were hanging on every word. "And so the little girl stood in the rain," Amara said, her voice filled with wonder, even though she was scared. "Because sometimes all you need is courage to ask for help. And when you have courage, good things happen." One of the younger children raised her hand. "Did the story have a happy ending?" Amara looked up and saw her parents watching her. She smiled the biggest smile of her life. "The happiest ending ever," she said. "And they're still living it."